we have a roll call, please? Deleon. Excuse me, here. Mr. Bononis? Not here. Mr. Croce? Not here. Ms. Alcott Cordero? Here. Ms. Ray?
Here.
To be clear, we have a quorum and we can proceed.
Okay, we all want to stand and pledge allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so next we have on the agenda is the conditional use hearing, and at this time I'd like to turn the matter over to our solicitor to conduct the hearing. Steve?
Thank you. We are here tonight for the conditional use hearing filed by LSOPP. I'm sorry, this should be on the record. We're here for the hearing tonight for LSOPP Devco LLC, the conditional use hearing for the property at 3621 Old Philadelphia Pike, Route 378. The applicant's attorney is here. The applicant's witness has indicated through his counsel that he's stuck in traffic. He should be here shortly. So what we can do is we can either take a recess at this point, or if acceptable to applicant's counsel, we have the zoning officer here, and it occurred to me that we go through some of the preliminary matters of posting and so on while he's here, and then we would take a break until your witness appears.
That's fine. Good evening. Greg Edelman here on behalf of the applicant. That's acceptable.
Okay, very good. Then we'd like to have the witness sworn in, and that would be the Mandy, right?
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, and nothing but the truth.
And sir, could you state your name, please?
Tyler Mitch.
And how are you employed, sir?
I work for Saucon Consulting, and I operate in the capacity as a zoning officer for the township.
Very well. And did you act in the capacity of the zoning officer for the purposes of this conditional use hearing? And is there a way that we can hear him better?
I think he needs a microphone. I don't think there's one over there.
There's not one over here. You might just come up.
Maybe you can just come sit at the center table.
That one's on.
And sir, in front of you is a list of exhibits that's been provided, 1 through 15. Do you have that list?
Yes.
And I'd like to go through that list with you for the purposes of record keeping. Is Exhibit 1 the conditional use application which was submitted, or by the way, in your position as zoning officer, you're familiar with the file?
Yes.
And you're familiar with this application?
Yes.
And you were in fact the one, and we'll get to it in a minute, the one who did some of the posting and the active requirements, correct?
Correct.
With regard to Exhibit 1, is that the conditional use application?
Yes.
As part of the application, did Hanover Engineering provide a letter setting forth their comments?
Yes.
Is that Exhibit number 2?
Yes.
Was there a site plan of Wilkinson Associates dated May 22, 2024 as Exhibit number 3?
Yes.
Was there public notice and proof of advertising done?
Yes.
And was that done set forth in Exhibit number 4?
Yes.
And as part of the public notice and proof, are there the proofs indicating that there was a publication on September 16, 2024?
Yes.
And then subsequently, was there a public notice and proof for a subsequent advertising on September 23, 2024?
Yes.
Is that Exhibit number 5?
Yes.
Or Exhibit number 6, is there an affidavit of physical posting?
Yes.
And did you sign that affidavit?
Yes.
Did you physically yourself go out and post the property?
Yes.
Did you take the pictures that are part of the affidavit?
Yes.
With regard to Exhibit number 7, is that an affidavit of service filed by the applicant?
Yes.
And I understand that you did not file that, but that's part of the file, correct?
Correct.
And then Exhibit 8 is a request for continuance?
Yes.
And then are you familiar in your position as the zoning officer that this matter was before the zoning hearing board?
Yes.
And the zoning hearing board granted a variance subject to various conditions, correct?
Correct.
And those are set forth in Exhibit 9?
Correct.
You're familiar as part of the file that there was various review letters from police, public works, and the environmental agent advisory committee, correct?
Correct.
And those are Exhibit 10.
Yes,
And none of those agencies indicated any objection.
correct, yeah.
You're aware, or number 11 is the conditional use agenda, at least in draft form, correct?
Yep,
And then you're familiar and you're aware that this came before the Planning Commission also.
yes,
And the Planning Commission recommended approval subject to various conditions.
yes,
And is that Exhibit 12?
yes,
And are you familiar that after the Planning Commission, the applicant sent in a letter addressing at least some of the issues of the Township Engineer's review letter,
yes,
Exhibit 13?
yes,
And then you're familiar that the applicant provided a light study as Exhibit 14.
yes,
They also provided an updated site plan as Exhibit 15.
yes,
And those are, all these documents are part of the file.
correct,
And to the best of your knowledge, they're true and accurate.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Edelman. Do you have any questions?
No, and I have no objection to the exhibits.
Is there an agreement to have 1 through 15 introduced into evidence?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Is that your witness that appeared, or no?
No,
Oh, okay.
unfortunately, no.
So for the purposes, Mr. Edelman, could you tell us on the record just the conversation you had with your witness and your request?
Yes, my witness, Mr. Michael Tantala, is on his way to the hearing. He is caught in traffic behind some type of an accident. It's being delayed. We estimate he should be here in the next 5 to 10 minutes, hopefully.
So what I would recommend for council is we take a recess at this point. When the witness appears, then we'll go back on the record and continue.
Okay, so the time is 6:38.
Very good. Then we'll go into recess for now until the witness appears.
Thank you.
Oh, I heard 78 is backed up. So we are back on the record. It is now 6:51 PM. The appellant's witness has arrived. He has made it through his traffic, and he's here. Just so we are clear as to where we are procedurally, we started the conditional use hearing. The zoning officer testified. We had a series of exhibits marked into evidence without objection. For the purposes of clarity in making a record, there's been copies of the list of exhibits provided for the public. There's a few members of the public here, and they've had the opportunity to see it also. We're ready to proceed now with the conditional use hearing. To remind the members of council as well as the public as to the procedure, the applicant will put on his case, meaning they will testify. At the end of each witness's, at the conclusion of their testimony, there'll be an opportunity for members of council to ask questions. There'll be an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions also at that point. I would ask for the members of the public, if you're going to ask questions, to ask the questions rather than make a statement. At the end, there'll be an opportunity to make a statement also. At the close of the applicant's testimony, if there's additional questions or comments, we can do that through council, and if the public have additional comments, we'll handle that at that point. At this point, I'm ready to turn it over to applicant's counsel. You can proceed.
Great. Thank you. Greg Edelman here again on behalf of the applicant. Good evening. We're here this evening for a conditional use application seeking the approval of an outdoor advertising sign at the property located at 3621 Old Philadelphia Pike. The property is approximately 4.8 acres in size, located in the general business GB zoning district. The record owner of the property is the Lower Saucon Fire Rescue. The applicant is the lessee of the property. A copy of the redacted lease between the property owner and the applicant is included as part of Council Exhibit 1, which is the conditional use application submission dated June 14, 2024. Under the GB zoning district regulations, section 180-68A2 permits outdoor advertising signs by conditional use, and the applicant is proposing a double-sided digital billboard to be erected on the property. Prior to this hearing this evening, the applicant sought and was granted certain variances from the zoning ordinance regulations regarding the proposed outdoor advertising sign. On September 23rd, 2024, the applicant obtained variances of the minimum front yard setback, the maximum structure height above the roadway, and the minimum distance between outdoor advertising signs. I believe that is reflected in the zoning hearing board's approval letter, which is Council Exhibit 9. That letter was dated September 24, 2024. And we're here this evening seeking council's approval of the conditional use application. I do have one witness here this evening to call to be sworn and testified, Mr. Michael Tantala, but before I have him sworn and testified, I do have some pre-marked exhibits that I'd like to hand up to the council before we go further, so if I may go off the record for a moment.
You may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we get a copy for Jason and Tom?
Did we? We can make one. Do you have extra copies for the guys who aren't here, or no?
Oh, yeah.
We can get it to them later too, if you want to use that.
Sorry, I have a
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Back on the record. Let the record reflect I handed up a package of pre-marked exhibits labeled Exhibits A1 through A8. Exhibit A1 is a copy of the conditional use application, so that's the same as Council 1. Exhibit A2 is a copy of Michael Tantala, PE's resume, curriculum vitae. Exhibit A3 is a copy of the billboard site plan dated May 22nd, 2024, which I believe is Council Exhibit 3. Exhibit A4 is a a couple of sheets consisting of an overall aerial and some road views. Exhibit A5 is a rendering of the proposed billboard on the site. Exhibit A6 is a copy of the Township Engineer's August 16, 2024 review letter, which is also Council Exhibit 2. Exhibit A7 is the applicant's October 7, 2024 response letter with attachments, which is also Council Exhibit 13. And then Exhibit A8 is a copy of the revised billboard site plan dated October 3rd, 2024, which is also Council Exhibit 15. Just for Council's own information, we had our exhibits all printed before I received Steve, so I apologize for the repetitive overuse of paper. At this time, if I could have Mr. Tantella sworn to testify.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And counsel, I'm sorry for interrupting, but prior to moving forward, you acknowledge that there's only 3 of the 5 members here, and you have a right, if you wanted to ask for a continuance or something else or some other relief. Are you ready to proceed with the 3 members here?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
And if I may, before we go any further, if I could ask of Ms. Gorman, have we had any response from either Mr. Bononis or Mr. Carochi as to whether or not they would be here or not, or have they called in indicating they were going to be late or otherwise? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We can proceed.
Are you sworn? Yes. Okay. Good evening, Michael. If you could please state your name and business address for the record.
Yes, my name is Michael W. Tantella. My business address is 6200 Frankfurt Avenue, Philadelphia, PA 19135. That's my company, Tantella Associates, LLC, Engineers and Architects.
And Michael, I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A2 in the package. And if we can also have that put on the overhead for anyone in the public. Is this a copy of your resume or curriculum vitae?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and are you a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir, I am.
And do you regularly design, engineer, and permit off-premises advertising signs, also known as billboards?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been doing that for?
In excess of 20 years.
Okay, and does your experience also include the structural design and engineering of billboards?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to offer Mr. Tantella as an expert in civil engineering and billboard signage based upon his qualifications as set forth in Exhibit A2.
He's admitted as an expert.
Thank you.
You.
Michael, I'd like to show you what we've marked as Exhibit A3, and if we can have that on the screen, that'd be great, which is a billboard site plan dated May 22nd, 2024. Have you reviewed and analyzed Exhibit A3?
Yes, sir. It's, I note it's dated May 22nd, 2024.
Yes, did I misspeak?
Yeah, I think it said 24.
May 22nd, 2024. And is this the site plan that was submitted with the zoning application?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A4. And is this a package of an aerial of the property and some street photos of the subject property? Should be, I believe, 3 sheets.
Yes, sir. A4 shows, indicated with a red arrow, the location on an aerial on sheet 1 of A4. Sheet 2 and 3 are roadway views, southbound and northbound.
Okay. And if you could, please tell the board where the subject property is located, how it is zoned, and the current and existing conditions on the property.
Yes, sir. The property, one moment. The property is located at 3621 Old Philadelphia Pike. It's shown here with the red arrow. It's zoned GB, General Business Zoning District. It's included as part of the fire company property of Lower Saucon Fire Rescue. It's generally north of Walter Street and It's bounded between Old Philadelphia Pike and PA Route 378.
Okay, and what's currently existing on the property in terms of natural resources and/or structures?
Natural resources, the property is situated within the floodway and floodplain. It has a lot area of 4.82 acres. The buildings are shown on the site plan, but it includes a one-story building, steel building, an asphalt parking lot, a detention area, and access from Old Philadelphia Pike.
Okay. And where exactly is the billboard located, proposed to be located on the property?
The billboard is proposed to be located on the east side of the property, closer to PA Route 378, specifically along the southbound direction. It's actually at the far east side with a 5-foot setback as proposed to the nearest edge of face of that billboard.
And is the sign proposed to be located outside of the floodplain?
Yes, sir.
And if you could please, using, I guess, Exhibit A3, the top details along the top of that exhibit, provide some additional detail to the council as to what is being proposed to be constructed on the property.
Exhibit A3, which is the site plan.
And maybe we could blow up the image in the top.
So along the top, it shows the proposed billboard in plan, looking down as a back-to-back spread face, double face sign structure, and then as an elevation view. So what's proposed are one structure supported on a single steel pole stanchion or upright, two faces. The faces measure 25 feet in length and 12 feet and a quarter inch in height. The overall height of the proposed structure from grade is set at 23 feet to top. And there's a spread between the faces of 12 feet, 3.5 inches at its greatest point of the V.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A5. And if you could please tell council what is depicted on Exhibit A5.
Yes. Exhibit A5 shows a rendered-in yellow face at the appropriate size, scale, and location along the southbound, or from the southbound lane to the property. And you can see this is set at the proper size face and the proper height and the pole in the proper location as proposed.
Okay, so this is to scale.
Yes, sir.
Now, we previously said, I believe you testified, that the billboard or outdoor advertising sign is permitted under the ordinance by conditional use, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And section 180-100.11 of Article XVIA governs outdoor advertising signs. Have you reviewed that section to determine whether the proposed application complies?
Yes, sir.
And if we use Exhibit A3, let's go through section 180-111's requirements one at a time so we can demonstrate compliance. The first was outdoor advertising signs shall be principal uses but may exist with other permitted or special exception uses on the property. I believe you already testified what's on the property at this time, correct?
Yes, sir.
So section B has a maximum height of 18 feet from ground level to the top of the sign. Was the applicant granted a variance for sign height?
Yes, sir. Granted a variance for 23 feet in height.
Okay, and that is what is proposed on Exhibit A3?
Yes, and if I could direct for Exhibit A3 in the lower right-hand corner of this exhibit, you'll see a table which summarizes these code sections and their requirements and provided conditions.
Why don't you take us through then the remaining requirements? It's C through L
Yes.
of section 180-100.11.
Subsection C refers to the maximum length of the face. What's proposed is 25 feet, and that's what's required, and this section complies. Section D refers to the maximum sign area. 300 feet is required, and that is what is proposed and complies. Subsection E refers to the minimum setback from property lines, from front, side, and rear yards as required for the zoning district. Here, a variance was granted to permit a 5-foot front yard setback. Side and rear yard setbacks comply, so that's shown here. It's not shown on this table as part of E, but the setback is shown as a 5-foot setback from the property line abutting PA Route 378 right-of-way. Subsection F concerns the maximum setback. Here, the requirement has 100 foot. The back of a sign face is 25 feet from PA 378 right-of-way. This complies. Subsection G concerns additional special setback requirements at the intersection of public roads. This section complies as proposed. Subsection H concerns outdoor advertising signs shall be separated from another principal use and/or principal structure on the same lot by at least 20 feet. And this complies. We're far greater than that 20-foot requirement as we're at the far east end of the property. Subsection I concerns outdoor advertising signs with a separation distance of at least 1,000 feet. What was proposed in this May 2022 plan and the variance that was granted to permit this was an 892-foot separation from an existing outdoor advertising sign, which is located south of the property, 892 feet. Subsequently, with regards to the riparian buffer, which was located on the property, this dimension was increased an additional 6 feet. So what's proposed for this sign is 6 feet more than what the variance was granted for 892, that being which is proposed to have a separation distance of 898 feet.
And Michael, that will be testified to with respect to the revised billboard site plan, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that a lesser degree of variance than what was previously granted?
Yes, sir.
All right, please continue.
Subsection J concerns the minimum number of sign faces. The proposed sign complies with this. This section permits 300 square feet per face and back-to-back, not the same facing direction. So that is what's proposed here, and this complies.
Okay, now section K has certain, I would call them performance standards. So if you could please walk council through what is or isn't being proposed as part of this billboard and how that complies with section K.
Yes, sir. Under subsection K, there are 4 paragraphs. One concerns audio or pyrotechnics. No audio or pyrotechnics are proposed or will be part of this application. That complies. K2 concerns the duration of the message which is displayed, and it shall have a minimum duration of 6 seconds as a static image. And this proposed technology for this sign complies with that. The copy second will display a static image for no less than 6 seconds. There'll be no flashing, no scrolling, no twirling, twinkling, oscillating, rotating, blinking, or moving or change of motion of copy or text. And that's consistent with this requirement and PennDOT requirements as well, that it's a static image that displays for 6 seconds. This section complies. Subsection K3 concerns the brightness of the sign, and the proposed sign will comply with that technology. The sign will have ambient light sensor that's part of the sign, and it will restrict it to not exceed the maximum nit level. Your code here requires 5,000 nits, and it will not exceed that. And it will also comply with the 0.3 of a foot candle maximum light level as outlined in your code as well. Subsection K4 concerns that these signs have a default mechanism that it will stop and return to a solid black display should there be any malfunction. This proposed sign also complies with that. It will have a default black display if there is a malfunction, and then it essentially turns off until it's repaired. Subsection K5 concerns that the applicant coordinate and permit message access for local, regional, state, and national emergency services during emergency situations. And here the applicant will comply with that with this sign. This sign will be placed into an Amber Alert program and made available for emergency messaging. The sign will also be made available for community and public event announcement messaging as required by the code in this subsection.
Okay, and the last section under 180-100.11 is subsection L, and that requires the outdoor advertising sign to comply with general sign regulations to the extent not modified by the prior sections. Have you reviewed the general sign regulations?
Yes, I have.
And does the sign comply to the extent not modified by section 180-100.11?
To the extent not modified, it will comply. It will also comply with PennDOT requirements. Permit will be required from them as well.
Okay. Do you have an opinion as to whether the proposed outdoor advertising sign satisfies the applicable specific conditional use standards? If so, what is your opinion and why?
In my professional opinion, it does satisfy those standards for all the aforementioned reasons as I went through section by section. It's a permitted use. It's issues with the property are not created by the applicant, and it will comply with these applicable specific use standards.
Okay. Now, while it's not the applicant's obligation to demonstrate compliance with general conditional use standards, have you reviewed those standards under section 180-12(1)(c) of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And if we look at those, I believe there's 6 of them under section 180-12(1)(c) of the zoning ordinance. Could you please tell council how the proposed sign complies? And some of your answers may be repetitive, but.
Yes, sir. Subsection 1, in accordance with the Township Comprehensive Plan and consistent with the spirit, purposes, and intent of this chapter, the outdoor advertising sign use is permitted by zoning on this property would be my response for that. Subsection 2, in the best interest of the municipality, the convenience of the community, the public welfare, and be a substantial improvement to the property in the immediate vicinity. My answer to that is it's also permitted by use and would also have use for message access for emergencies and local public event announcement messaging. Subsection 3, suitable for property in question and designed, constructed, and operated and maintained so as to be in harmony with and appropriate in appearance to the existing intended character of the general vicinity. My response to that subsection 3 is that it's permitted, again, by use, by zoning on the property. It's appropriately spaced from other advertising signage as permitted by variance. Subsection 4 is in conformance with all applicable requirements of this chapter and all municipal ordinances. Yes, it complies with that per my testimony and evidence submitted relative to the code and other standards, specifically PennDOT. Subparagraph 5, suitable in terms of effects on highway traffic and safety with adequate access arrangements to protect streets from undue congestion and hazard. My response for this is that the outdoor advertising sign proposed is determined by the township and PennDOT and will not create an abnormal impact on traffic that will cause an adverse impact to traffic, more so than a similarly situated sign, advertising sign similarly situated at this location. It's small, it's appropriate for its size and the traffic along PA Route 378. It's easily read if a driver chooses to read it, and it's consistent with other signage in and along this corridor. There's no adverse impact as proposed by the sign that is similarly situated and permitted by this use. Subparagraph 6, in accordance with sound standards of subdivision and land development practice where applicable, I would say that this section is not applicable. Billboards are not considered land development under Pennsylvania law, and the attorney can speak to that as well.
And Michael, notwithstanding that, will the billboard have to comply with uniform construction code and building code requirements?
Yes, sir. Like any other structure, it would have to meet those building requirements to resist, all the loads applied to it, wind, dead load, live load. It would go through a similar design process through rigorous standards to be a safe structure.
And do you have an opinion as to whether the proposed outdoor advertising sign satisfies the applicable general conditional use standards? And if so, what is your opinion and why?
Yes, I do have an opinion, and yes, it is. It does satisfy those requirements for all the aforementioned reasons.
Okay. I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A6, which is also Council's Exhibit 2. It's a copy of Hanover Engineering's August 16, 2024 review letter. Have you seen and reviewed this review letter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did the applicant respond to this letter?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A7, which is a copy of a letter from me dated October 7, 2024 in response to the August 16, 2024 review letter, and it has a couple of attachments. If we could go through the comment and response letter just briefly to demonstrate how the township engineer's comments were addressed. So, Exhibit A6, the first comment was the setback lines for the general business district shall be shown on the plans.
And in response to that, as part of Exhibit A7, number A1, the setback lines have been added, and it's included in a revised plan.
Okay, and I'll show you Exhibit A8. Is that the revised plan? It's dated October 3rd, 2024.
With revision 2, dated October 3rd, 2024. Yes, sir.
And is that the plan that includes the updated lines referenced in the response letter?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Comment number 2 in Exhibit A6 is the applicant shall provide a plan demonstrating compliance with natural resource protection standards and provide limits of disturbance on the plan. How did the applicant respond, and is it identified on Exhibit A8?
Yes. In response, the applicant stated that natural resources existing on the property in the immediate vicinity of the area where the proposed outdoor advertising sign is to be constructed are now shown on the revised plan. There are no woodlands, lakes, ponds, or rock outcroppings. Additionally, floodplain soils and riparian corridors have been added to this revised plan. The soils are designated on Exhibit A8 as a sort of a light brown line and font. A geotechnical report for the subsurface area where the sign is to be constructed will be completed prior to submission as part of the sign permit application. The applicant also noted that the limit of disturbance will be in the immediate area around the proposed base of the sign, which is just a circular base of where the pole meets the sign, grade. And that pole is the limit of earth disturbance, and it is indicated in the revised plan, Exhibit A8, both in the plan detail and in the proposed billboard profile details as well. It's a single pole that supports the head above the grade.
Okay, comment number 3 in Exhibit A6 was asking for a carbonate geology study for the site. I think you just testified that one will be provided with respect to the geotech for the subsurface of the sign area. However, did the applicant revise in Exhibit A8 to note that the property is located in a carbonate geology area?
Yes, they have in their revised Exhibit A8 Revision 2 drawing. Design Note 1 has been added or revised to read that the sign is located within a carbonate geology area on the zoning map, and that geotechnical report will be provided subsequently as part of the application.
Okay, comment number 4 in Exhibit A6 notes that evidence of the PennDOT permit approval is required. Isn't it true that PennDOT can't issue the permit for the outdoor advertising sign until the township issues its permit?
That is correct.
Will the applicant supply the township with a copy of the PennDOT permit upon its receipt?
Yes, they will.
Okay. Comment number 5, I think you just testified to earlier, is the outdoor advertising sign must comply with the requirements of the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code, and the applicant has agreed to do so. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Comments number 6, 7, and 8 on Exhibit A6 all deal with the variances of the sign height, the sign setback, and the sign separation spacing distance. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the applicant obtained all those variances, correct?
Yes, sir, on September 23rd of this year.
Okay. Number 9 on A6 is referring to section 180-100.11.K, dealing with what I called performance standards, and you've already testified with respect to all of those requirements. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, I have.
All right. Did the applicant provide in Exhibit A7 a lighting analysis with respect to, I believe it's section K3, I believe that's right, K3, to demonstrate where the 0.3 foot candle, I guess, limits would be occurring on the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I believe that was included as council's Exhibit 14, but we do have a copy of it that we can put up in larger format. It's the light study analysis right there. So just briefly, can you describe for council what this shows and where the 0.3 foot candle line is?
Yes, sir. So this shows the property, and the sign is located at the center of the blue shading. You can see the red V. Those are the proposed sign faces. And in terms of the limits, in accordance with the requirement, the 0.3 of a foot candle limit is shown as a red outline set at a distance of 134 feet from each face. Directly as you stand perpendicular to it, those limits drop in as you get closer, but that's the 0.3 of a foot candle limit shown in red around the boundary of the sign.
Okay, and does that 0.3 foot candles limitation stay within the confines of the property, but for light showing onto the roadway?
Yes, sir. My professional opinion to interpret this technical document is that, yes, it's contained within the property for those 0.3 of a foot candle limitation.
Okay, and again, does this lighting analysis that's included as part of Exhibit A7, also council's Exhibit 14, demonstrate the sign's compliance with that requirement of Section K?
In my professional opinion, yes, it does.
Okay. And the last couple of comments on Exhibit A6, the Township Engineer's Review Letter. Number 10 is providing signatures of the applicant and owner on the plan. Was that added to, I believe, yep, Exhibit A8? in the left-hand corner?
Yes, sir. A block was added in the left-hand corner.
Okay. And the next comment, number 11, on Exhibit A6, request provide the color and illumination of the proposed outdoor advertising sign. On Exhibit A7, how does the applicant respond to that?
The applicant responded that the sign will be painted black as required. Design note 2 on this Exhibit A7 revised plan indicates that the color of the sign has been added to the revised plan.
Exhibit A8 is the
A8.
revised plan.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Comment number 12 on Exhibit A6 requires or requests a project narrative, including the information requested in the section. And I believe the applicant responds there's only 2 subsections that are applicable under that narrative requirement. One's the proposed use, and 2 is the hours of use. And the proposed use, as we all know, is an outdoor advertising sign, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the hours of use is 24 hours a day, is that correct?
Yes, sir, as proposed.
Okay, and then that's still subject to the reduced illumination intensity after 10 p.m. under the ordinance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the last comment on Exhibit A6, comment number 13, is specifying means of access to the outdoor advertising sign for both construction and maintenance. And how did the applicant respond on Exhibit A7, and was it noted on Exhibit A8, the revised plan?
In Exhibit A8, the applicant has added design note 4, the existing driveway off Route 378 will be utilized for construction and maintenance access for the sign. So it's identified as required.
I have nothing further for Mr. Tantella. Open him up for questioning.
This would be an opportunity for members of council if they have any questions. We can go in any order you like. Go left to right, right to left. Laura, do you have any questions?
Not really. The only different thing that I noticed this time from the last time was the light study. Can you put that up again bigger? What we have is really tiny.
If we can enlarge it too.
So I was just trying to interpret this when I was looking at it, the numbers.
Yes. So your ordinance requires a maximum of 0.3 foot candles to be emanated from the sign face. And Mr. Tantella can specify and go through the details, but I believe that's the red line.
Yes, sir. So just to clarify for your question, the face is a light source. That light source that's put out diminishes with the square of distance. So that's why these distances are very important to know where that light of source is going to drop below that 0.3 of a foot candle. Additionally, as you stand oblique to the face, the strength of the light also diminishes. So really, when I read this plan technically, I look at the location of the face and does it comply with the requirements of the ordinance, that 0.3 of a foot candle within the property, and it does as shown here. Everything else just specifies distances beyond that red requirement and what the equivalent light level would be above ambient light at those distances and those angles equivalently. So again, there's a photocell that's hardwired onto this structure, and that controls and limits the light output of the sign so it's not too bright on a cloudy day or adjusts appropriately and dims during the evening, and does not exceed the requirements set forth in your township regulations. So this is a physical representation. There's a lot of information on here, but the key takeaway is that red circular indication at 134 feet perpendicular to the face. That's that 0.3 of a foot candle limitation, and you could see that with respect to the property.
So that would be the maximum when it's fully as bright as it can go.
Yes, and
Okay.
The more clear answer is these standards are set if it were to display completely white copy. That's sort of the measuring stick for this. The reality is it has content, it has colors, images, things like that are all static, but when you mix those things in, it's actually less than that 0.3 of a foot candle. That's a worse case if it were a completely white copy, which it would never have. But it complies nonetheless.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my concern was also lighting, so you pretty much answered them. I was just concerned about the neighbors around there, to making sure that, you know, they don't really have a lighting impact. So if they meet the regulations, there's not more we can do.
This complies with your regulations. It orients the faces to 378. Both southbound and northbound directions read from it. The V spreads it to the road to principally advertise to that area. It's a smaller face. It's a lower face. It complies with the code requirements with the variances, and it's a strictly controlled installation in terms of the lighting is specifically controlled by that photo cell that limits it. The technology limits itself to comply with that, and there's a threshold above that, being it's not the complete white copy that's displayed. So this is an appropriately sized sign with appropriate technology to control itself in terms of its display.
Okay, thank you. I may have other questions after hearing from the speakers.
I may ask Michael one other question. Michael, I don't think you've mentioned the construction of the LED components. Are they shielded or not, and if so, how?
So they are shielded by their construction. The sign displays are made up of panels. Those panels are made up of strips of individual LEDs set in louvers, essentially, that are very close to the source of those LEDs, and they essentially cut off angles physically at oblique from the face. So it really limits the light to the road directly as shown in this exhibit, both how it's spread, but also in terms of its construction to have cut off and diminished brightness oblique from the face. All these things acting in tandem, the photocell, the spread of the face, the low height and size, the controlled limits in terms of your code requirements in terms of overall brightness and 3/10 of a foot candle, and it's a static display with no moving animation or appearance of animation, both complies with your code, complies with PennDOT, and is a strictly controlled installation at this location on the far side of the property line, the far east side, adjacent to and close to 378.
Okay, so the spillage is within the regulations. There's no spillage outside where it's not supposed to be.
In my professional opinion, yes, it controls that. There's no spillage from side to side over the sign. It projects its light. Other types of signage, conventional signage, bounce light off from a face with an extended light fixture. This comes from the source, and there are these strips that provide some cutoff at each angle to left and right. So it's a much more efficient use of technology in terms of lighting and brightness specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple other questions about the lighting. So there's, it's designed so that it has a self-monitoring system that would control the light to be within the township's regulations. Is that right, what I'm hearing?
Yes, it's a photo cell. There's a computer that's part of it. The images and ads are transmitted through cell connection wirelessly to it. The sign, these manufacturers, as part of the sign, monitor its operations so that if something goes wrong and it shuts down, then they can repair it quickly if there is an issue. But it has that automatic safety shutoff feature also as part of it. But there's multiple levels of control as part of the sign.
That was gonna be my question, is how do you monitor whether or not it's calibrated the right way to make sure that on today it might be 0.3, but something might change or whatever, and it might not monitor 0.3 anymore, or it thinks it's 0.3, but it's really 0.6.
It's set at the beginning by the manufacturer when it's installed. They measure the light as part of it.
Do they have like an outside device that they like test it with, like from the exterior?
Yeah, yes. I do that myself, where it's I have a light gun that can
Yeah,
measure
so
light at a distance. Some of them call them a nit gun, but you can measure levels of light above ambient light at certain distances. But I will tell you that all those levels of control, they monitor remotely. So the power usage is just one indicator. The operation, there's internal monitoring by the computer to make sure everything's operating at its standards. And they also do have a camera facing the face of the structure just to observe it, and they monitor that as well. So there's multiple fail-safes as part of that.
In addition, the applicant's willing, if the township requests, to provide a calibration report of the sign. So you could also do your external checking, which normally you would do for any light source. We can also provide you with the calibration as well. So that's something that's pretty standard if requested.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think you should have both the exterior and the interior so they both coordinate and confirm each other.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, sir? Are you done with your, I'm sorry, are you done with your questions?
Yeah, I'm done with my questions.
I have a couple and then we'll open it up to the public. Sir, just so you clarify, the target audience for this billboard is Route 378. As you're familiar, there's Route 78, which is a major highway nearby. Is Route 78 the target audience, or is Route 378 the target audience?
Route 378 is the target audience. As you go to the adjacent Interstate 78, that's separated with barriers and vegetation as well.
You're familiar with the Hanover Engineering letter, and you testified already as to how you believe you complied with it.
Yes, sir.
You're aware that as of today, you have not received confirmation from Hanover Engineering that you have complied.
Yes, sir.
Are you willing, as a condition, to comply with whatever remains outstanding from the Hanover Engineering letter if it has not already been complied with?
Yes, sir. We will respond to that.
I think you testified already that as part of the application, part of the conditions, the applicant would provide access for public service announcements, community announcements, police and safety announcements, and so on. As a condition, would you be willing to have that condition imposed?
Yes, sir.
Would you be willing to comply with any and all representations made by the applicant? And I say that generally, not just you today, but generally made before the Planning Commission, before the Zoning Hearing Board, as well as today.
I'll make that representation on behalf of the applicant, yes.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any further questions at this point. This is an opportunity now for the public. If you have any questions of this this witness, as I said before, there'll be also an opportunity to tell us your position, or if you'd just like to tell us something later. If you have any questions, I'd ask you to, there's a process, unfortunately. So it's a multi-step process and a little bit more formal than normal. So the first thing is you'd be sworn in.
Steve, just before you go into that, can I just ask if this has come before planning and or EAC?
Yes, it was before EAC. EAC had no negative comments. It came before the police also, and I believe Public Works. No agency indicated anything negative. It came before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission recommended approval subject to certain conditions, namely somewhat what I've already outlined, that they would comply with the Hanover Engineering letter, they would comply with all of their prior representations, they would also provide access for public service announcements and so on and so forth. So it had a favorable recommendation for planning with those conditions.
Thank you.
So ma'am, I'm sorry about that. Could you, was she sworn in?
No.
Okay.
Could you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And ma'am, could you state your name, please?
Yes, Chris Weaver.
And normally, at a normal township meeting, we don't ask you your address.
Right.
However, because this is a conditional use hearing, one of the requirements is you have to have some sort of standing, meaning you have to be relatively close to this property.
3612 Old Philadelphia Pike.
And I'm not going to ask you to, I know you're not an engineer. How far away is that from the property? Approximately. In hundreds of yards would be fine.
25 feet.
Very well.
I mean, would you say it's across the street?
That's fine. So do you have any questions of the
I
witness?
do. Well, I have a question in general.
Mic on?
My question is, what date was the variance granted?
So, well, the hearing was September 23rd, 2024, and the approval letter was September 24, 2024.
Is there a requirement to notify property owners that are in close proximity or adjoining abutting?
Yes, there's an ordinance requirement. I don't know what it is here in the town.
We didn't receive it, and that's why I ask.
Okay.
So my biggest concern is the variance. What we're here for tonight is less of an issue because the variance is the issue. There's a hardship that a variance is a hardship that's created not by the property owner, I assume, because the property owner is a fire station. So what was the hardship and how did they overcome it?
Those issues were testified to at the zoning
But
hearing.
I wasn't given notice, so I want to know, I
ma'am,
need details.
That's fine. Ma'am, I'm not sure why you were given notice. I'm not sure if you were entitled to give notice.
Okay.
I'm not the attorney for the zoning hearing board. However, I believe what your question is what happened at the zoning hearing board and how did they meet the requirements? I think what the applicant is telling you, and I will certainly allow them to answer if I'm not doing it right, is I think they're saying, we did go there, we met our burden, we testified and so on. But I don't want to speak for the applicant either.
Let me also say though, ma'am, one of the variances was to seek a reduction from the minimum front yard setback. The required setback is 25 feet off the 378 right away. That would push the sign actually closer to your residence.
No, I get it.
So we pushed that one further away. The other two variances were a height variance, and the reason there was a height variance is as evidenced by Exhibit A4. As you're familiar, you have plenty of existing signs along 378 and you have power lines. So you wouldn't be able to see the sign. So we found the middle ground between the bottom of the power lines and the top of the existing signage. Now that was not created by the applicant or the property owner, it's the existing environment. And then the last was the minimum distance between outdoor advertising signs, and that was created by the natural features on the property. The ordinance does not allow structures to be placed in the floodway or floodplain. There's only a small section of the property that is actually outside of the floodplain, and that's where the sign was located.
Yeah, I would just want to know, was it proper to give us notice? Because I would have liked to have been here for that.
And that's something
right
we
there.
can look into.
So,
You could
thank
get
you.
a copy of that letter, the approval letter.
Yeah, or just the notice that we were supposed to get. Or the notice, is there a requirement to give us notice of a hearing when there's a variance that affects?
There's ordinance requirements for notice. I don't know what they are for
Okay.
zoning. Did you receive a copy of a notice for
Well-
this evening?
Yes.
Yes.
This is the only one we got, and that's why I'm here, so.
It's our obligation as an applicant under the conditional use regulations to provide you with notice.
Right.
So we provided you with notice, and sometimes we err on the side of caution of providing more notice than is necessary. That's what I typically advise my office to do when they do that, so.
All right, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else from the public that has any questions?
Making sure, I think she covered most of mine.
Sure,
so,
take your time, no rush.
You
I'm
would-
not answering questions, I don't know why I would need to be sworn in.
Sir, if you have any questions, I'm going to stop you and we're going to actually go through the process, but take your time. Do you have any questions?
I think she covered most of mine. I was not invited to the variance,
Sir,
also. It's fine. I'm good.
so would you mind that's okay. You can do it from where you are.
Jeff Jaworowski, 3612 Old Philadelphia Pike.
And our court reporter is, I'm sure, eminently talented, but there's no way she can spell your last name without you doing it for her.
Jaworowski.
And your address again, sir?
3612 Old Philadelphia Pike. I do have one question. On this print, why didn't they show the houses? so that we can all see, you know, how it affects them.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Why did it or why
Why
didn't it?
didn't it show the houses?
Well, no, on the lighting analysis study, they are shown. They're all there, it's an aerial. So it shows all existing conditions.
No, the houses on Walter Street, on Old Philadelphia Pike, there's houses.
They're there. The houses are all there, it's an aerial. I don't have, here's my pointer.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
see Walter Street coming up, and then
So,
I think, there.
here's Old Philadelphia,
Yeah.
houses are right here. Houses are all here.
okay, I can see them now.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, they're ghosted in on the back from the
Okay.
aerial.
All right.
And then you can see it on the other side of 78 as well.
Sir, could you raise your right hand to be sworn?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And could you state your name, please?
Colin C. Guerra. I'm the owner of 3609 Old Philadelphia Pike.
Would you mind spelling your last name for the court reporter?
It's Guerra.
And do you have any questions of the witness?
I do. I looked at this light study. If this shows, you can see my house. I don't know, do you have a pointer that I could?
Yes, I do, sir. Just hit that.
So this is my property right here. So my patio, sorry, is about right there.
And sir, just to be clear, you're pointing to the bottom left of this exhibit, correct?
Yeah, I'm the owner of 3609.
Thank you.
So my question is, even though my sight lines aren't in direct line of the light study, I'm still gonna be able to see all that light from my back patio, and my back windows, and my backyard. And also my neighbor, which he's in the process of selling that property. So it's kind of unfortunate that the new owners that are gonna be moving in shortly are not even gonna be aware of this. I do have a follow-up question to that. What is the plan to provide screening prepared by a landscape architect to assist these homeowners to protect the value of our properties? The reason I moved here is because of the natural resources of that lot. That leads me to the comment number 2 on the Kaplan-Stewart letter. It says the natural resources existing on the property in the immediate vicinity of the area where the proposed outdoor advertising sign is to be constructed are shown on the revised plan. There are no woodlands, lakes, ponds, or rock outcroppings. That's absolutely not true. That whole back corner here, this whole border right here is all wooded. And that's Black River Creek. That's one of the most quality creeks in Lower Saucon Township. I don't understand why that's not even on that comment.
Let me see.
So I'll go back to my question. What is the plan to provide screening to all the homeowners in this natural resource corridor?
So there's no ordinance requirement for screening. In addition, you don't have a legal right to be protected from seeing light. You have a legal right to have no glare come onto your property. So just because you see something lit in a far distance doesn't mean that you're entitled to screening.
Yeah, but you have to understand,
I have to answer your
Lower
question.
Saucon Township.
I have to answer your question.
Premier Township
Excuse me, sir,
in Northampton
sir.
County.
Answer your question first.
I'd ask for, since you've asked your question, you allow him to answer it, and then you're permitted to certainly ask a follow-up question afterwards. But let's do this one at a time, please.
Thank you. So the ordinance has a maximum foot candle limitation for the sign, and that's what's being shown. The ordinance does not say this sign must be screened from all adjacent properties.
Yeah,
So
but let me
there's
ask
no
you a question.
requirement.
You were sitting on your
Sir,
patio.
hang on, please let him finish. I know it's difficult because it's a different circumstance that you might be used to, but just let him finish and then you can follow up with anything you want.
In addition, the ordinance has what's called an intensity limitation. So during the daytime, the sign has a brighter illumination so that it can be seen.
Yeah, just like your house.
At the nighttime, after 10 p.m., the ordinance requires that illumination to drop to 250 nits. So it's a very, very substantial reduction in the total amount of light intensity that comes out of the sign. So it basically becomes a dull sign face. So your ordinance is designed to handle the types of issues you're talking about in terms of the illumination and then also the intensity. And what this lighting analysis shows is that that 0.3 foot candle line isn't hitting anyone else's property, okay? Can it be seen? Yes, anything that's lit can be seen from a distance.
Well, it's hitting one property on the bottom,
The 0.3 foot candle line.
right here.
Okay. I'm not gonna argue with you.
Well, it's a fact.
I'm not arguing with you.
So my question is, what is the plan to provide screening for all these homeowners in the vicinity?
We've already answered that.
Legally, but that's the correct thing to do, that the township should have a follow-up on.
Okay, I'm gonna treat that as a comment, not a question.
Do you have any further questions, sir?
I also was not notified of the variance hearing. I was noticed,
You gotta talk into the mic.
I'm sorry, I'm recovering from pneumonia, so. I did receive the notification for this hearing, but I did not receive the notification for the variance hearing.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's something we'll look into. And we'll have our zoning officer look into.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that has any questions?
Is it appropriate to ask?
I'm sorry,
you-
ma'am, I've just,
Yes. Oh,
no, just again, if you wouldn't mind stating your name, just so we have the record.
Weaver.
And just so you're aware, normally you're allowed one bite at the apple, but certainly
Oh,
we'll,
okay, I'm sorry.
certainly we'll provide you with courtesy to ask.
Oh, yeah, it was just a follow-up. Is it appropriate to ask you to table your decision while you find out if procedurally all the rules were followed? I mean, if they weren't, with regard to the variance and with relation to us receiving notice, is that appropriate to wait? That's all I'm asking.
And I can help answer that question. Is the zoning hearing board, although it's a part of the township, it's a separate body. It has its own lawyer, it has its own board, and so on and so forth. So that is something that is essentially, although it's under the umbrella of the township, it's somewhat similar, or it's somewhat different rather. So it's something that you voiced your concerns about, it's something we have to look into, but it would be inappropriate for us to do something today based on what another body did or did not do.
Right, okay, thank you.
Anything further from anybody from the public? Any questions, rather? Okay, seeing none, do you have any further witnesses?
I don't. I just moved for the admission of my exhibits A1 through A8 at this time and asked for the record to be closed.
Okay, very good. So that means, and they're admitted, so what that means for the purposes of the record is the the Lower Saucon Township Council exhibits 1 through 15 were previously admitted, and the applicant's exhibits A1 through A8 are now part of the record also. Some are duplicative, but they're all part of the record. So the record's closed at this time. So what this means is now, I'm sorry?
I still have a question.
You have a follow-up question. Okay, so before it's closed, we have a follow-up question.
Okay, I just want to make sure that all the regulations were followed for the neighboring residents as far as the lighting, because I'm always concerned about lighting, so I'm just being consistent.
Sir, can the applicant respond to that?
Yes.
You may have already, but could you?
I believe we have Mr. Tantala's testimony was it does comply. Your township engineer has reviewed the plan, and to the extent the township engineer has any more comments with respect to lighting, we've agreed to comply with whatever review comments the engineer may come up with subsequent as the permit potentially would be going in. He'd be analyzing it again, so.
Okay. Before we go into thank you. Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
Can
Thank you.
I just ask one other question? Sorry.
Of course.
Okay. There was, one of the residents asked about, the language on the plan about identifying the natural resources and the features of the Black River. Have you complied with those requirements to identify it? I think what I heard was that this billboard is in an area that's outside of the floodplain
Right.
and all of that, but I think for the purposes of our regulations, you still identified where those features are.
Correct. The Exhibit A8, as well as the application, at least the plan that was submitted with the application, identifies the natural resources that are in the immediate vicinity of the billboard area. So it identifies the floodplains, identifies the soils, it identifies the floodway. It does locate the Black River location, and the proposed sign is located outside of the floodplain. That's why we had to move it another 6 feet from where it was originally proposed. The billboard does not, the plan does not delineate all the features to the back corner of the property because there's no impact proposed as part of this application. It's obviously a very, very minimal limit of disturbance. That's what the engineer was asking for in his review letter A6, and it's literally a circle around the base of the pole of the sign. So that's the area of impact.
And just to clarify, you're not proposing to disturb any of the trees or the other screening that, it looks like to me, I'm looking at the shape, it's grayed out, like you said, it's like an overlay of the Google Earth or whatever. But it looks like to be pretty significant vegetation there, to where some of the properties are located for the people that commented. I just want to make sure we're not proposing any disturbance there, and there's no disturbance for construction over there either, right?
That's correct. The existing riparian buffer area will be not disturbed. The access for construction will be coming from the existing driveway opening to the fire rescue property. The existing large trees on the other side, on the northern side of the property, will remain. There's a small shrub or two that's in the immediate proximity of the proposed sign location that will have to be trimmed a little bit, but those are just scrub brush. It's not part of any of the riparian buffer as well. So the answer to your question is no, and the impact will be severely limited to just the immediate location of the sign pole.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there's no more questions, the record's now closed. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a statement at this point? Hearing none, we can move on. Is there anyone from, at this point, we can either provide additional comments or someone can choose to make a motion. Before we do that, I just want to remind council as to the standards, and I do this for council's edification as well as the public's. As this property is a conditional use application, the rules are that an applicant who's seeking this kind of approval has to prove compliance with the standards and the criteria. Once they show that they've met compliance, the conditional use must be granted unless there is a showing of a detrimental effect on the public health, safety, and welfare, and can be denied only when the public interest exceeds what might be more than normal. So a conditional use is different from starting from square one. It is not. It is deemed to be consistent with the zoning ordinance. It's presumed that it does not affect the public interest. So that's the starting point. So I want everyone to be aware of that. With that, would anybody like to make any comments, or would somebody like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion at this time and grant conditional use approval subject to the applicant meeting all of the conditions set forth in the Hanover Engineering letter dated August 16, 2024, and with the applicant following through with all the representations made before the Planning Commission as well as Township Council, which includes providing access for public service announcements, community announcements, and police and safety announcements. Would there be a second?
Can I ask you to amend that to also include the requirement that they perform the calibration certificate, or provide the calibration certificate to assure us that the light emissions are what the computers are telling them internally?
Sure, I'll amend my motion to include that.
And also, would you consider amending your motion to also include the representations made before the zoning hearing board also?
And also amend my motion to include the comments made and testimony made to the zoning hearing board and other municipal bodies. Is there?
I'll second that.
With all the.
With the couple of amendments, yes.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? Laura?
Can you just clarify then on this calibration, is that like a yearly thing that happens, or do we request it? How does that work?
It can be either. You can request it, we can supply it. I would think that upon request would be the optimal design. That way you're not waiting
Okay,
for a
so
time period.
if somebody notifies us that this light's
We would provide it upon the township's
really
request.
going crazy or something, you
Yeah,
could
and-
check it out.
That's correct.
So there has to be a tickler file someplace to remind the township to do that then?
There is, or upon any complaints.
Yep.
Either way.
Okay.
We can decide if we want them to provide it on a yearly, it sounded like he was offering either
We can do both.
or do both. So he provides
It's
it on a
fine.
yearly basis, and then in the interim, if somebody were to
Fine.
complain and say it wasn't acting right, then they would come and check, provide it again.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Do I need to amend my motion again?
Yeah,
So including annual
well,
report?
the frequency of the calibration to be, once a year to the township, and to also provide such, calibration, upon request.
Okay. And you'll amend your second?
Yes.
Okay.
We're ready for a vote?
Yeah, I just, I do want to say, I, for the residents that are here that have not, or they have not, you're saying that you haven't received the notice for this, the variance, I'm very sorry to hear that. I would hope that all of the regulations were complied with, including the notice that you were supposed to have had. And I do appreciate the concerns that you brought forward about being able to see the sign, Old Philly Pike, but I think I'm constrained by, our conditional use requirements here. They seem to have complied with everything, and those are the requirements. We're requiring them to comply, and if they comply, we're constrained with that. So I did want to just highlight that for the people here, that I do appreciate you coming and voicing your concerns, because we do need to know those things. So I,
Okay, we're ready for a vote?
Yep.
Ms. Gorman, can we have a roll call?
Ms. Delion,
Yes.
Ms. Alcott Cordero,
yes.
Ms. Ray.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-0.
Great. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Appreciate it.
And thank you, everybody.
So then, for purposes of record, just so you're aware, there's a requirement that we then provide a written decision. We will do that, and I'll have that before you at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Will the residents get notice that we're attending tonight when they're gonna,
It will
when this
be
is
on
gonna
an
be on the
agenda,
agenda?
just like every other agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion to close the hearing?
What's that?
A motion to close the hearing?
We can do that, if you want. I mean, the motion's over, the hearing's over, but we can formally do that.
I think we usually do.
Motion. Is that a motion?
I make a motion to close the hearing.
I'll
I'll
second.
All those in favor? Or can we have a roll call, I guess?
Ms. Alcott Cordero,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Ms. Delion.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Motion passes 3-0.
And we can formally stop the stenographer at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, and I guess if there's no other business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Victoria, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the time is 8:04 PM. My record,
Meeting's adjourned.
my record.
They are gonna check that though.
I have to check that. Yeah, no, I want to know what's going on. I'd like to.
Yeah.